Hi, I'm Austin Rosenbaum. I'm a Zpryme research analyst, and I'm joined by Niloy Sanyal, CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of GE Power Digital Solutions. So Niloy, I just wanted to know sort of what your thoughts are about design for energy, and how does that fit into what GE is working on today?
Yeah, look, when Zpryme came to GE last year and talked to us about this event, and we haven't been part of ETS in previous years, I thought it was a really good fit in terms of how GE is looking at the transition in the marketplace and what ETS is positioning of this event is. It is in exactly the right place. And this is unique in my experience, having been to utility events quite a few times over the last few years, and how we're tackling some of the biggest challenges this industry, which is a 124-year-old industry, but it's going through a very challenging as well as exciting transition. So the incumbents, like power and utility companies, are having to figure out what that looks like, and more importantly, the customers who consume electricity need to figure out how they interact with their utility companies differently, and design is at the core of it, right? And we were just talking about a session right now about design in the context of electricity industry. For the last 100 years, this largest machine that human being ever created did not really have to think about human interactive design element, which is again a software construct. So why GE is so interested in this space, one, General Electric, this was the legacy our founding father, Thomas Edison, started the electricity industry in some sense, but we do see an inflection of software and the hardware coming together. If there's any industry where the two come together in a meaningful way, it's definitely the electricity industry.
So what are some of the solutions that a utility could implement today to really plan and design better for the energy future?
Yeah, I mean, the way to think about it is, if you look at any industry, like whether you are in a manufacturing industry or you're running a financial services company, software has become the heart of how you run those companies. You cannot be a chief financial officer without having an ERP system. You cannot run a manufacturing enterprise without having supply chain management and manufacturing quality systems. But if you're running a power plant or you're running the grid, you don't often have the ability to use modern software technology, cloud-based, Internet of Things, big data type of software to run it more effectively and efficiently. So there's a huge transition and opportunity. World Economic Forum has predicted about $1.3 trillion of additional value in the next 10 years just from using the new technology and software construct without changing anything in your hardware. So there is a lot of value that can be brought to the industry with the right set of softwares. However, I think the bigger question to ask is how should the industry be designed going forward? And I think ETS has brought in some really strong thought leaders, CEO of utility companies, software providers like GE and others, as well as startup company. I think we could do more with startups in future ETS conferences, and GE would support bringing our partners into this. But we need to become, as an industry, a lot more open to innovation and changes in business models. So I think, again, I would say this forum in the last couple of days has been quite eye-opening for me personally, and the interactions have been quite sophisticated and thought-provoking on where the incumbents are, how are they navigating, how the regulators are thinking about changes in how they regulate this industries. And again, I think the concept of design and construct of how consumers interact with this industry, that's a very important topic.
So where are some of the gaps in what we're seeing today in the utility industry, and what is GE doing to sort of address some of those different gaps?
So I would say one of the comments that was in a panel just before this, if you look at the central generation of the industry, it's in the best day in the year, it'll be at a 42% economic efficiency. In any industry, if you're at a 42% efficiency, that means something's dramatically wrong. Now, there are laws of physics that prevent you from going close to 90% or 100%, but you can get a lot better with use of software in the right way. So again, the incumbents have to understand the paradox shift with how digital technologies can dramatically change how they operate their power plants, how they operate the grid. But again, I will reinforce where GE's position is that, yes, you need to get more out of your existing investment and your investments in your assets and get more out of the performance of your assets, but you also need to be thinking about new business models, right? The 100-year-old business model of putting electricity in front of our customers, end customers who consume electricity, and getting paid for that, at least in the context of US, may not be the model that we need to evolve in the future, where building owners, residential manufacturing companies want to produce their own electrons. So how can utility companies, which are going to be as important in the ecosystem as they were in the last 100 years, but they need to change how they operate. So GE's position is we want to work with our customers, which are utility companies, power companies, and help navigate this transition to what I would call the internet or the energy internet, right? How do you take the convergence of electrons and data to really become a much more sophisticated, efficient machine than what you have today, as well as think about different business models.
So what are some of the things that a utilities needs to start thinking about today in order to get to what you're talking about there?
I think first and foremost is the culture of innovation. And again, some of the thought leaders that we've heard over the last couple of days definitely make me believe that that culture of innovation is there at the leadership level. But I would also say, in my personal opinion, change in the regulatory environment, right? Today, many parts of US regulation incentivizes a behavior where you have to take a ratepayer approach, right? You're incentivized to spend more CapEx dollar. We need to drive more efficiency in the system, which incentivizes more of an different dimension of how you regulate the industry. So regulation today, for most part, is hindering innovation, in my opinion. In certain pockets, we have seen the value of innovation and regulation done the right way can drive, especially with renewable standards in certain states, California and New York being a perfect example. It's driving a lot of innovation in those states. ERCOT, Texas is a great example where, again, very sophisticated regulation and deregulation has created a really dynamic marketplace. So regulation, the right regulation in this new paradigm shift is very important. Leadership of the existing utility and power companies and vendors like GE to embrace digital innovation and digital transformation, that's a huge transformation that this industry needs to embrace, and it's just the starting point. We kind of talk about this being the first innings of a 9-inning game. We're just getting started with that journey, right? So there's a long way to go. And then last but not the least, I think how the industry interacts with its customers. So again, the notion of design is very important, right? I mean, you're a millennial coming in, how much do you really know about your electricity bill or what you do with your consumption? We need to change how we interact with you and your cohorts who are going to be the future customers going forward, because you are a digital consumer. Everything you do is on your mobile phone. So the utility needs to interact with you in a very different design paradigm than in the past.
What are some of the different strategies that we can use to approach new customers like the millennials? And how can we know that we're being effective and create value out of that? How do we measure the value?
I do think one of the approaches that we're hearing in this conference, the notion of as a service, which again, the utility industry literally invented and defined the as a service model, right? You get your electricity as a service. You don't have to go in and buy the meter separately, the electric pole separately, you get it as a service. But what if a millennial didn't have to interact with the utility companies only to pay their bill on a monthly basis? What if you were interacting more to choose what experience you want to have? I want to, in a summer month, have my house be in the 72-degree Fahrenheit with plus or minus 5-degree scale, and that's an experience I want, and I'm ready to pay extra for that experience versus someone who's more focused on efficiency, right? Or another customer might be a manufacturing entity, might be more focused on reliability. So you got to be able to have the sophistication to deal with these different customer needs and then be able to provide with the right technology stack in different business models. And the example I'll give you is this is not unique in the broader scheme of things. If you look at what's happened to the telco industry, what used to be paid based on number of phone calls you made, today is a completely different ballgame. AT&T, Comcast, all those companies have become content provider. They're providing as a service for your security needs, your broadband needs, your home entertainment needs. So we need to think about that in the context of electricity as well. What are some of these as a service contexts that provide better experience for the end customer, segmented by their individual needs? And that's a pretty dramatic shift for this industry from where it has been.
All right. Well, Niloy, thank you so much.
Thank you,
Niloy
Austin.
Sanyal, GE Power Digital Solutions. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Austin.